I hope the stream didn't already start. It's Thursday night football is upon us, and you have to ask yourself that question on the thumbnail when you see the Bears and the Commanders playing. Who will suck less? We're going to find out the answer to that question coming up here. Of course, we're going to build lineups 3 ways. We're going to hand build a lineup using the data that I look at for Sports Info Solutions. We're then going to hop into the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer, build some lineups that way, try to figure out how the projections are driving people how to play. And last but not least, we will run some sims to figure out who are the simulated ROI kings, who are the ones that the data is pushing us towards the most. And of course, at the end, 3 takeaways to try to build your own unique lineups tonight on this Thursday night football showdown. Of course, $1 million to first place. Of course, the over-unders in this game are the totals. Chicago, 19.3 implied points. Washington, 25.3 implied points. So that is going to be a thing we start off with right away. And I will say some new stats that I added from Sports Info Solutions into my repertoire this week, one of which really stood out. It's going to be the motion stats. Something that jumped out with that game with the Dolphins versus the Broncos a couple weeks ago was A, how bad the Broncos were versus motion, B, how much the Dolphins use motion to get things set up where they want to, and how that combines together for an outlier day. So that is something for me that I'm integrating into the process a little bit more to try to evaluate some differences here. And it does feel like this matchup should be a good one for Sam Howell. Sam Howell on the year, running motion plays where the Commanders are, 21.3 motion passes on the year, the negative 0.16 EPA, so not that good. Of course, I look at expected points added metrics. That tells you how much above average a team is doing in every possible situation. So that's what we're looking at here. What the Bears suck at, though, they cannot defend motion passes very much at all. 17.5 motion attempts going against them, 0.26 EPA. So what we are seeing could be the best game of Sam Howell's career. It also isn't just that stat, though, because, again, motion plays are about 15 to 20 plays a game, depending on how heavy the team is using them. But the Bears overall, 0.29 EPA per dropback, worst mark in the league, 0.32 EPA per pass, worst mark in the league, red zone, 0.4 EPA per red zone pass. This all bodes really well for Sam Howell. So that is going to be the way that I get different right up top, is playing Sam Howell at captain. This is going to be a ballsy play for a single entry, but I think we can get here with a double stack. I'm not sure, as we talked about yesterday in the Spags rankings video, which thumbnail test didn't work on that video, I guess is what I'm going to blame for that one. Not the 2.5 hours in length. Sam Howell's not getting to throw deep that often. That's the one thing he's been good at this year. He does have a positive EPA when throwing downfield, as a 0.81 EPA, which is his best mark anywhere that he's playing ball. If he's getting the ball downfield, he's having success. That said, only 2.5 attempts per game, which is about half of what you want to see for a good aggressive downfield QB. That said, if there's any situation that can make him get there, it's this matchup against Chicago. They give up a 6% deep ball rate. Of course, deep balls being throws of 20-plus air yards. So Chicago does give it up pretty nicely, give up a 1.2 EPA on those plays. Point being, you put all this stuff together. The Bears are bad defensively at everything. So when you see teams fail against them, that's really a reflection on the team more than it is the player. With Howell showing some signs of life last week, I think Howell's an interesting captain play to go to. So that is why we're going to start there. I think Terry McLaurin would still be somebody I'm willing to go to. The salary on Howell, I guess he's not that bad at flex. 9,400. Yeah, this works. This works because McLaurin would be a little more expensive. We can get away from that. So we'll put Howell back at captain, Terry McLaurin in the flex, and we're going to try to build at least a double stack here with Washington for my single entry. No, this is not at all what we're talking about. No. God, look at the thumbnail. The thumbnail says Thursday Night Football. It doesn't say, come answer Falanini's questions live. That's not how this goes. Nobody's better at me than scaring off people just wandering around YouTube. All right, so who else can we pair with McLaurin? Obviously, Jahan Dotson would be the easy one. On the year, Chicago, mostly bad out wide, giving up a 0.68 EPA, which would be one of the worst marks in the league. Also pretty bad versus running backs in terms of the passes there. So maybe Brian Robinson gets going again. Maybe Antonio Gibson has his first good game of the year. Either way, though, let's go with Brian Robinson. I think the work for him has been pretty good. He's definitely somebody that stood out with the red zone work. He's getting 3.5 red zone attended touches per game, 1.3 inside the 5-yard line per game. I think that bodes well for Brian Robinson in the spot. If we are going to go with the thesis that Sam Howell is going to be able to get some stuff done here, I still think Justin Fields gets there in this game, so let's make sure we get him in here right away. No reason to move away from Fields. I know people might be afraid of him. He's not running as much as he used to. Still running 7 times a game, still running 1.5 times a game in the red zone. That's enough for me to get there. I don't think there's going to be a lot of games like he had last week where he's throwing for 4 touchdowns, throwing for 300 yards. Would be great to see that with the rushing upside. But for me, I think that Fields, the naked play, feels okay. But let's see if we can stack him up with anybody. Cannot afford DJ Moore. We do have Chase Claypool out of the mix. So maybe Equanimous St. Brown is a cheap play. Makes some amount of sense. Not the sexiest play in the world, but he is running 42 snaps a game, 21 routes. Shocking 1.05 EPA, though that has been on just one target per game for Equanimeous St. Brown so far. Darnell Mooney, a little too expensive. Tyler Scott get going here? Tyler Scott's probably not getting enough reps. I think let's try this out. Let's see if we can go with Equanimeous St. Brown being the player that pairs with Fields. It is a pretty good run matchup going against Washington on the year. 0.07 EPA per rush. As I've mentioned, anytime that you have a positive rushing EPA for a defense, that does mean that you should be attacking that with the running back. So Roschon Johnson's at 4,800. We cannot afford him. I guess, do we fade Fields then? I don't want to fade Fields. That feels like that's got to be a bad move. But it would make us more contrarian. No, I can't fade Fields here. What could we get for 3,700 left? Let's see that. Oh, we can get Gibson. So we can double stack the running backs. Gibson is playing so little, 22.5. No, actually, no, that's incorrect. 30 snaps per game, 21.8 routes per game for Antonio Gibson. Is it possible that Robinson and Gibson both get there? That would be pretty unique. Tyler Scott getting some rushes and Washington D giving up deep TDs at a high rate. Yeah, they are also pretty bad downfield, as Tyler points out here. 7% deep throw rate, 20-plus air yards, 1.3 EPA on those plays. You know what? Fuck it. All right, let's go Tyler Scott. That'll save us a little bit more money, maybe allow us to get to Roschon. I think a 5-1 Commanders build would look the most appealing. Got Lance Thomas. What's he been doing? 3 targets. Not bad usage for Logan Thomas here. I always think Lance Thomas because of the basketball player. Logan Thomas, Mooney, Roschon. Going to Roschon the week after Herbert has an explosion week feels like good game theory too. Let's go to Roschon here. I think that you could certainly make a case that a 3-3 build is kind of middling it. I certainly don't mind attacking this Washington defense. I don't mind attacking either side, really. You talk me into 5-1 builds for the Bears, for the Commanders. I certainly wouldn't hate either. But I think Tyler Scott at $200, it just takes one play for him to get there, quite literally. Roschon, then another play. Tyler Scott also chips away at DJ Moore, chips away at Mooney if he gets there, chips away at Equanimeous St. Brown if he gets there. What would be the 1v1 here? So it's either Tyler Scott and Roschon or Equanimeous St. Brown, who is getting more work, and Diami Brown, Velus Jones, Cole Turner. Cole Turner playing 17.5 snaps compared to 49.7 for Logan Thomas. Man, I think Logan Thomas is not a bad play here. This is a tough call. The hand builds lately have been very tough. I feel like the pricing is getting a little bit tight here on these slates. Let's go with our first thing, because last week, on Monday, the instinct was correct initially to go not with Daniel Jones at captain. Obviously, it wouldn't have worked out much better with Darren Waller at captain, but still, this is the way we're going to build this one. And I think we're not going to max out the salary. We'll go with Roschon Johnson here. So a 3-3 build, Sam Howell at captain, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Justin Fields, Tyler Scott, and then Roschon Johnson. There's going to be our team here that we will submit into the huddle single entry. Now let's look at the projections. Let's figure it out. Showdown slates are just gross. I think they're a lot of fun, but I will say, like, the more money you put into them, the worse you feel. Like, I don't know how 150 maxers are always doing showdown slates. It's nice to be able to represent the different viewpoints and all that, but I can tell you I maxed out the mini maxes along with 220 maxes, and then had, I think, 30 entries in the Millie Maker on Monday. And I still felt like I just did not have good enough angles covered there. Did not have Seahawks captain come up. That was not one of the sims anywhere. So that is where sort of the game theory comes in, where everybody's playing Daniel Jones, like we talked about. Everybody's playing Daniel Jones. Everybody's playing Geno Smith. How do you get leverage against that? You could still play Daniel Jones, but then you play the defense against him. So I think there was some logic there to unearth that just did not occur to me and did not occur to enough people, apparently. Though that was a very chalky build that won it with the Seahawks captain. I think there were individual lineups at second, third, fourth. So there was upside there if you got it right, but obviously you got to get it right. All right, so let's look at the top projections here, of course, on Stochastic. I'll also copy them because we're going to put them in the optimizer in a moment. Top projected players looking like Justin Fields, though. Only 0.03 more in the projection than Sam Howell. So that is pretty surprising. That does mean the optimizers probably will like Sam Howell more, which may mean that, once again, I'm a chalk donkey, but I do think the data does back up just going to Sam Howell and not trying to think about it. If you're not going to Sam Howell, I would still go to one or two of the pass catchers. Maybe Howell doesn't get there. He's not running enough, 2.8 times per game. But still, I think that Howell is more likely to get there than not. Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson also in the top 5, and Khalil Herbert rounds at the top 5 at an $8,600 price tag and a better projection than DJ Moore. which surprises me because I do think that Khalil Herbert's role still a little bit fragile. Only had 35.8 snaps per game compared to 22.5 for Roschon Johnson. Khalil Herbert got there last week by breaking some long plays. He wasn't great on a per play basis. Just kind of had some outlier stuff. So I think Khalil Herbert, to me, if the projections force you there, probably not a player that I'm going to be dying to get a ton of. Top value plays, Tyler Scott. So this might be we might have actually built a very chalky 3-3 by hand. Byron Pringle at number 2. Byron Pringle is going to be active. All right. I guess keep an eye on that one. Pringle might be active because of Claypool being out. John Bates is number 3. So the third string tight end for Washington. Great play for value, I guess. Robert Tonyan, Antonio Gibson. Those are your value plays. And Gibson, I do think, he's been really bad. He's still getting enough work, I think, to be useful on a showdown slate. The kind of guy you would never play on a main slate, but on a showdown at 3,200, just takes Antonio Gibson converting. I mean, he's getting so little red zone work. He would have to get there PPR-wise, I would think. But 0.8 red zone intended touches per game. He's got to run hot in some way for you to get there. Maybe, honestly, Gibson might still be a fish play, but I do think for showdown, you can talk yourself into it a little bit more. It's ownership projections according to Stochastic. Of course, you can pay for these yourself. They'll update throughout the day, so keep that in mind as we go. Top projected owned player, once again, Sam Howell, Justin Fields, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Khalil Herbert. So basically going in order of the projections there. And then a captain, we do see the most Sam Howell. So I really thought that going Sam Howell at captain and like triple stacking him, double stacking him would be a little more contrarian, but I do not think this is very contrarian at all. Chalkiest captain is Sam Howell. Second chalkiest, Justin Fields. Third chalkiest, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. Robinson certainly has a case to be made, but I think that because you are seeing Robinson so heavily there, I think trying to go to the pass catchers for Washington would be a little more appealing. And Howell, too, again, you get leverage on Howell captain by putting McLaurin at captain, by putting Jahan Dotson at captain. Dotson's going to be under 7% owned. He has not had a good game. I think those are the kind of plays you can make. And Logan Thomas, if he's going to play 50 snaps a game, I think he is a viable contender at captain as well, going against a Chicago defense that on the year giving up a 0.46 EPA to tight ends, which is not very good. So certainly Logan Thomas can get there. He does get more of his plays out of the slot. They're not great at defending the slot either. They're not great at defending anything. I'm okay attacking the Bears any way you possibly want to. Top or bottom owned plays. So the guys that are going to be the least chalky that you could potentially cut down your ownership product with. Equinemius St. Brown, I think, is a very valid play here at 6.4% projected ownership, $1,800 salary. I think that looks like a play that you can get a lot of ownership away from. And also, he does run routes. Like, he's been out there. He was a guy that was getting some targets last game with Claypool out of the mix. So I think Equinemius St. Brown, he and Mooney are very similar players. Mooney would be paying up to get contrarian, but Equinemius St. Brown is so cheap that I think that playing him here and hoping that he's a fractional amount of his brother, Amon-Ra, I think would be a good move to go to. We have Crowder, Homer. None of these guys are that valid. Cole Turner, I think, is somewhat valid. They're not as valid as Logan Thomas. Byron Pringle, I just don't have a lot of faith there. Tyler Scott, again, low owned. I think he's the dart throw you can get to at $200, but will be one pretty popular. Oh, Pringle Chips is on Commanders. I didn't even realize that. Okay, that makes more sense. But then who's he taking snaps from then? How is Pringle going to get? I mean, it's a revenge game, I guess, for Byron Pringle. So he's got that going for him. But yes, I don't know how Pringle gets snaps. Is Samuel out? No, Samuel's healthy. I don't know. Pringle to me feels really thin, but he should benefit again from the matchup. Anybody going against the Bears is going to be in a good spot. So if they have a guy with a projection, these guys are all in play if they are in Washington. And the Chicago guy is a little bit less in play. But I think Cole Turner, Pringle, I guess now knowing that he's on the Commanders, and just did not track that offseason move for myself. But appreciate that's why the chat's here to keep me honest. The like button's looking awfully lonely if you ask me. I agree, guys. Smash the like button here. This is what the process looks like. All right, let's go. Let's do, God damn it. Fantasy Cruncher always reloads on me. Here we go. DraftKings Showdown. We're going to run the optimizer here. Of course, what the optimizer part of this process tells us is just what the projections are doing, what the core math does. And then the simulator will show us, hey, here's where the outlier players come from. But let's see what we're going to get on this one. So my projections, let's upload them. It has been a hectic morning. Squeezed in a workout right before this. Had to clean the house, clean the kitchen as always in the morning. Had to prepare chicken to smoke later today. And then had to clean up dog pee because having a 13-year-old dog is like having a puppy again. Feels like the best of times. So appreciate all you guys hanging out with me here. And of course, that like button matters even more when I've spent a portion of the morning cleaning up pee. So we are seeing, there's a lot of 5-1s. This is a lot of 5-1s. Okay, so Commanders 5-1s are not sneaky at all. You have 4-1. Are we talking about on FanDuel? 5-1 for Washington, though, 21 out of 25. So basically, the math would tell you that 82% of lineups then should be 5-1. That is a lot. The other ones are 4-2s. So going to a 3-3, I guess, is going to be inherently contrarian. A 5-1 for the Bears, even more contrarian. I don't know how it gets there. But 3-3s, I think the math is not going to put people there enough. So that would be, man, there's a lot of 5-1s, all 5-1s with Justin Fields too. So the other thing to do would be to play a 5-1 with the Commanders and not play Justin Fields. You could just go down to one of his pass catchers. You go down to DJ Moore. You can go down to Herbert. You can go down to Roshan. I don't know, probably not Roshan. Cole Kmet. But basically 5-1s with Fields as the bring back. And then this is all Sam Howell's captain too. And half of them are Sam Howell's captain. So all right, so the projections are firmly saying the Bears are not in play. That means the way that you probably win the money tonight is, again, getting unique on those 5-1 builds if the Commanders do roll, as the Vegas totals and the projections are saying, or you go the exact opposite way and put yourself on a completely different path and how people are going to play. And I think that's very valid. So I would play, and I will play, I can tell you, I'll play some 4-2 Bears. I'll play some 5-1 Bears tonight because that, again, that's just, it's not the perfect play. With Showdown, it's not about playing the best plays. I know that's been the mantra for so long for so many DFS providers out there. But point being, like, for Showdown, it's just about playing what everybody else is not going to play. So when everybody thinks that Daniel Jones is going to get there, the Giants are going to have this rebound game on Monday night, you play the Seahawks at captain. When everybody thinks that the Commanders are going to roll, it's going to be the best Sam Howell day possible. That could still happen, and you could still play less owned combinations of those builds. But this is so much 5-1 Commanders that I think you owe it to yourself, basically. If you're just trying to get off the beaten path and get to a different trajectory to get yourself to first, playing 5-1 Bears is absolutely that. So there we go. Shout out Sam here. Great show, bro. I'm addicted. I appreciate that. This show is definitely, I think, the most functional, the most actionable. The Friday one as well. Of course, Fantasy Football Gauntlet we'll do tomorrow for the main slate. Similar process there. We'll hand build one. We'll do some the Showdown project. We'll do some of the projections, rather. We'll do the simulations. Of course, we'll do the Battle Royale. But I think this is sort of what a good process looks like. You're just trying out different things, trying to see the different angles that people build with. And of course, as I mentioned here, this is all stochastic data. Full credit to them. Go check out their site. But I do split my projections and my ownership projections between stochastic and ETR just to try to better represent what the field's doing. All right, so we have our lineup build here. Let me make sure nobody's too much of an outlier. All right. We're not too low, not too high on anybody, maybe a little high on Joey Sly, but that's okay. So what it does here, we just build 10,000 lineups, and what we're going to do is have those 10,000 lineups compete against each other here 40,000 times. That is what the stochastic process looks like. If you want to upload your own projections and ownership projections, you would download the template here. So that is how that part of the process goes. But let's run the simulation here. We will use just the pure stochastic projections and ownership projections and see what it comes up with here. And we'll identify then what it says the highest ROI players are, and we'll look for a few fun ones as well. Hard to find. The one thing I will say, the one critique I would have for stochastic, I guess two, would be that if you do favorite your things, if you do heart the lineups, it then exports it in the order that you hearted them. It doesn't export them in ROI order. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Number two would be that basically, like, you can't find 5-1s that easily. You sort of have to manually go through and comb for them. So that's one thing that's not the best for Showdowns. We're not going to be able to easily find a Bears 5-1. We'll have to kind of figure out how we would do that. But here we go. Here are the top ROI ones, and let's favorite the top 150 as well to get a read on the numbers. Brian Robinson, captain with Antonio Gibson, Commanders, Jahan Dotson, Justin Fields, Sam Howell. That's the highest ROI lineup right now. The second highest, Sam Howell, Commanders. Again, we're just getting 5-1s here, so that's not a surprise. 5-1 Commanders build is going to be very obvious according to the projections, according to the Sims. Only stop by to congratulate you on the awesome thumbnail. Very appropriate for this Thursday night game. Thank you. I'm trying to get to the heart of what makes thumbnails work. So we're trying some different stuff here on Splash Play, always. Different content, different thumbnails. It's all part of the process here. Cash game lineup that I would try to play tonight would be this one: Sam Howell, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, Commanders, Jahan Dotson, Justin Fields. So even the cash game lineup is a 5-1, which is not a surprise. Let's see if we can find a 5-1 for the Bears. It's got to be one, right? I think what we have to do to figure it out would be putting in a bunch of players that are on the Bears. So contains Fields, add filter, contains Herbert, contains Moore. All right. So here's a 5-1, it looks like. Yeah, here's a 5-1 for the Bears. 229% ROI, and this would make the top 150 overall. Fields at captain, Bears D, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson. So that is a pure Commanders fail outcome. The second one here, the second one is another 5-1. Justin Fields, Gibson, Cole Kmet, Moore, Mooney, Herbert. Fields, Gibson, Bears, Kmet, Moore, Herbert. Bears D. That's a way to get really different. Bears D at captain. Bears D, Brian Robinson, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Justin Fields, Khalil Herbert. That would be incredibly unique. I got to tell you, that's an interesting lineup, that one. Justin Fields. I don't think the Bears D can get there. I really don't think that Sam Howell is that bad. He's actually been pretty accurate on the year, 67% catchable ball rate. He's facing a Bears team that on the year has an 84% catchable ball rate allowed. There is not a lot. Yeah. It's hard for me to see a Bears captain get there, but it got there with Seattle on Monday night. So what are you going to do? Would you start Fields straight tonight at Washington or fire up Stroud at Atlanta on Sunday? Just real fast. I don't like taking these ones, but it is close enough to being a Thursday night football related question. I'd probably go Fields tonight. I think that it's not a bad matchup for Stroud. Stroud has been able to get there in some ones that on paper are pretty tough. But I do think that Fields, the rushing upside should be there for him. I would start Fields personally. I think people are a little bit too down on Fields. And they should be up, given that he just had his best passing game, admittedly against the Broncos. But I think Fields is not a guy you should be benching that often for other players. All right. Anyway, this is sort of the look. Let's look at the favorites, though. Let's look at the overall exposures, because this will be the biggest tell. So the highest exposure player is going to be Sam Howell, 57%, Justin Fields. So I think what we're doing here is moving Sam Howell out of captain, right? No, still getting a lot of in captain. 20% Sam Howell at captain, 18% Fields at captain. So this is a fairly chalky captain rollout for the Sims here, where they're pushing you towards the top four highest owned captains, which is not a surprise, I guess, but sometimes does not work out that way. Many interesting low owned plays. Highest ROI player is Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson at the captain is actually the highest ROI player, which I guess could happen. God, that feels incredibly thin. Commanders D, I think, certainly also in play at the flex. They're one of the higher ROI ones. So it's really just Gibson and Commanders are the higher, the ROI positive teams, according to the Sims, which does not feel that great. Most leverage that the Sims are giving you, most Commanders D, Antonio Gibson, Roshan Johnson. So you're getting some, so that's weird. You're getting leverage both with Roshan and Khalil Herbert, but definitely some leverage for the run game overall. All right. Yeah, so I guess that's it. Any other interesting lineups to look at? Who would be, let's look at one with Tyler Scott. Let's find a few with like really low owned guys, because I think that could actually be useful. Tyler Scott. Here is your highest ROI Tyler Scott lineup: Justin Fields, Brian Robinson, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Herbert, Sam Howell, Tyler Scott. So a 3-3. It's so weird because usually showdowns, the issue is like 3-3 is kind of a half measure. For this slate, though, if the projections are just going to say the Commanders roll, everything is really pushing you towards a Commanders boat race, you just have to play the Bears being competitive. And that's not asking a lot. Asking for a Bears 5-1 might be a lot. Asking for a Bears 3-3 or even a 4-2 is asking a lot less. So I think that is a pretty obvious takeaway to have here. So, yeah, I think that covers it pretty well. Any other low-owned guys that are actually worth looking at? Let's look at a Cole Turner lineup and an Equanimeous St. Brown one. Just, again, if you guys want to take these ones straight away, I wouldn't advocate for it just because of the fact that you do obviously have the data moving around throughout the course of a day. How the fuck do you spell Equa, right? There we go. Equanimeous St. Brown. Here's your best Equanimeous St. Brown lineup: Khalil Herbert at captain, Brian Robinson, Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel's just getting fucking dragged to everything, and he's played well. Like, he did have one good game this year, but I don't know that I want Curtis Samuel as my bring back in every Bears heavy lineup. But Curtis Samuel, Equanimeous St. Brown, Justin Fields, Sam Howell. Your best Cole Turner lineup. Again, these are just the ones with guys under 10% owned. So if you just want to steal them, I guess you can. Sam Howell, Cole Turner, Justin Fields, Khalil Herbert, Logan Thomas. Oh, 2 tight ends. That's kind of interesting. That is definitely one way to get different from the other Howell captain lineups, is you're playing 2 Bears and you're playing 2 Commanders tight ends with Terry McLaurin, no Brian Robinson, no Antonio Gibson. It's interesting. Again, this is what Sims tell you. It just tells you the process of like what it's like to get different, what looks profitable when you get different. So there we go with that. All right. So 3 takeaways. Let's do it. So The first takeaway has to be, if you're playing a Commanders 5-1, you have to really get different with those. That has to be number one. That is the most important part. I think Commanders 5-1 still make the most sense. As we talked about, this match was perfect on paper for Sam Howell. This is the best spot for him to get going. Absolutely against the Bears. I guess unless you were playing the Broncos, that'd be the only way it could be easier for him. That said, everybody's assuming that. So what do? You try to get different, try to get yourself off the beaten path for the most part. But if you are going to play the chalkiest, the most likely outcome, you got to find a way to get unique. And that means maybe not playing Justin Fields as your one bear. Maybe that means going something like 2 tight ends. Maybe that means omitting the running backs, but find a lever to get different if you are playing a 5-1 favoring the Commanders. Number 2 is going to be that just get off the beaten path for some amount of your lineups. So get in 3-3 Bears Commanders teams, get in 4-2 Bears, getting some 5-1 Bears. That one's pretty thin, but it is, I guess, possible they can get there. If Brian Robinson is the one. Maybe Sam Howell has a good passing day, runs in a touchdown. There's a lot of ways to do that and get off the beaten path. They're not going to project as well. It's not going to feel as cozy, but that is how you can absolutely win the $1 million tonight. So that's what I would say is number 2. It's 5-1 Bears, 4-2 Bears, 3-3 Bears. Just a lot of that in there because it's not going to be well represented by the projections. And then number 3 is, I think, somebody is going to benefit from Chicago that did not go off last week. DJ Moore, Khalil Herbert, those were the obvious plays that went off last week. Moore, I think, was less flimsy. Like, I still think the role is good. We did the Spags rankings yesterday. He looked pretty good in terms of the EPA metrics. That said, like, it's not a guaranteed thing that Moore and Herbert are going to get there. And I do think they will be the Bears that are most represented besides Justin Fields. So I think those getting away from those guys and being willing to play a Tyler Scott, being willing to play an Equinemius St. Brown, Cole Kmet, even, like, he had a big game last week too, and he's probably not going to get played that much. I think these are ways you can get different with the Bears, and these are all valid Bears players. So you could still, like, it's just, there's going to be very chalky builds tonight. And I think they're going to be, the ones that are less chalky are still going to be chalky relative to what the different outcomes are. Like, there's going to be chalky 3-3 Bears stacks, going to be chalky 4-2 with Bears. So just doing that and then getting a unique guy in, I think, are 2 really big levers to chop away from the field. So that's what I would suggest. But there we go. Excited for this one. Should be high scoring. I hope so. I mean, we haven't had a good Thursday night game in a while, so hopefully this one comes through. Of course, as always, I will pander quickly here, guys. We do 5 days a week of streams here on Splash Play, of course, every day at 11 a.m. So subscribe down below, hit the like button, leave a comment, any questions you have, no matter what they are. I always answer them after the fact, so please do that. And of course, go check out probably.com. Great prop bets going for tonight's game. As always, all the betting markets, what we do is track top probabilities from around the world, then comb them down. It's one data point, so you know what the best legal sportsbook opportunities are. And it's all for free at probably.com. So check it out. probly.com. That is my baby. That is the thing that I've spent the last year and a half bringing to the light of the public. There it is for you. So go check it out. And again, follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Come back tomorrow because tomorrow's Fantasy Football Gauntlet, where we'll do a similar process for the main slate. Appreciate all you guys hanging out. Shouts to the chat as always. Shouts to the Squirt Squad. Keep squirting away. I will see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days and good luck. If I don't take this down, hope you guys do. Bye.